David Douglas and the Mountain Lion. Story by Robin Potter, illustrated by an older version of Storybook Weaver, 1978. The Adventures of David and Douglas. Two brothers who met in heaven. Love, Grammy. Once upon a time, there were two little boys named David and Douglas, and they liked to stand around the general store and listen to the old-timers tell tales. Both boys thought the scariest tales were always the best. One evening, instead of going home like they were supposed to, like they promised their mother, Douglas convinced David that they should stay longer. David always had a hard time saying no to Douglas. So they stayed until it was almost dark. This just happened to be the night the old-timers were telling tales about a very big, very scary mountain lion living in the woods. The old-timers said the growls of this mountain lion could be heard for miles around. They were also very positive that no one had ever seen the mountain lion and lived to tell about it. Now, as luck would have it, these two little boys had to walk home right through the woods. And the time finally arrived when they had no choice but to begin their journey home. The boys looked at each other as if conjuring up courage from some invisible force. Then each one gulped, took a deep breath, and David was the first one to climb the hill leading into the woods. Douglas quickly caught up, and he stayed very close to David. The two walked as one. Douglas asked David, "Is the sun going to the other side of the world now?" David said, "Yes, and I'm not sure I'm ready to say goodnight to the sun yet. Are you?" "No," said Douglas. "We stayed too long, and now it's really, really dark." "David, do you really believe what those men said about the mountain lion? Do you?" David looked around and finally said, "Nah." One uncertain step followed another as the two of them made their way through the woods. "Did you hear that?" said Douglas. "Hear what?" replied David. Douglas pointed to the trees. "I thought I heard something over there by the trees." They both stopped, and their hearts were racing so fast it was hard to listen. David waved his hands in the air and said, "It's just your imagination. Come on, we have to get home. Mom is going to kill us." Douglas said, Mom's going to kill you. I'm just your little brother, and you kept me out too late." David just grunted to himself. Each step took the boys a little further into the woods, and they seemed to feel their hearts were just beating as fast as possible. They were almost in a full run when all of a sudden both boys did hear something. They came to a full stop, turned around, and before anything else could happen, something big and furry jumped out of nowhere, knocking David to the ground and engulfing Douglas in a mountain of fur and claws. Just as the two boys knew it was the last time anyone would ever see them again, a long, wet, slippery, gooey tongue licked David from his chin to his forehead. This was no mountain lion. It was their favorite black lab, a giant of a dog, showing up just in time to safely guide and protect the boys the rest of the way home. Well, after arriving home safely and being grounded for an entire week for scaring their mother half to death, David said to Douglas, "Next time, I'm just not going to listen to you. I don't know where or why Mom always thinks I'm the one who thinks these harebrained ideas. Well, from now on, I'm going to do just what Mom tells me to do. She says that little boys should always be home before dark, and they should always listen to their mother. And even our Sunday school teacher said the same thing. Well, I do remember the commandments she taught us about said something about how children should always obey their parents. And we know Mom always tells us how dark it gets each time the sun says goodnight to this side of the world. We definitely heard what the old-timers said about the dark, about when the mountain lions come out of the woods. So, the way I see it, maybe we should figure that Mom knows more than us, and we should think about that commandment a little bit more. David and Douglas were home and settled in their bedroom. Douglas looked very thoughtful and asked very seriously. He asked David, "How do you suppose Moses wrote the commandments? With his finger? Or did he use finger paint?" "Ah, of course not," said David. "Even Moses wouldn't go anywhere without his computer, and everyone knows that." "Well, you're both wrong," said Big Sister Ashley. "God wrote the commandments, and if you're God, you can do anything you want to, even writing. You can do anything you want, and you don't need a computer or finger paint." Exodus 20:12, 31:18 does say, "Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days will be long upon the earth, which the Lord thy God giveth thee." And he gave unto Moses 2 tables of stone, written with the finger of God.